What's going on, guys? Today we're going to be looking at some Wizard of the Coast repeated errors that you can find in your own collection.
So I guess first we have to really go over what a repeated error is. So a repeated error is actually an error that happens over and over again on the same card, and that's why we call it a repeat. Starting off today, we have this Diglett fight symbol error, which PSA actually notifies on the slab itself. And when we zoom in here, we can see that this fighting symbol right here for dig is actually sideways. Rather than a true misprint, this was actually a design error. So that happened when they were designing the card on the computer, they accidentally left that one sideways. You can find one of these raw in decent shape for about $10. Next up, we have Butterfree D edition error. If we look down here at the first edition symbol, we will see that it actually looks like a D. That's because some sort of hickey happened right at the bottom of that one and made it look like a D. It's not actually a D. There's also a D edition Meowth out there, a couple copies of Meowth with the same sort of error. That one's a little more rare, but this one is pretty common. You'd easily be able to find one of these in your collection. And that's good news because you can pick one of these up in raw condition for about $20. Next up, we have Blue Dot Vulpix, also known as Green Dot Vulpix, and also known as Blue Butt Vulpix. Obviously, you can see this sort of like highlighter looking spot right there near its rear end there, and that is actually a repeated misprint. It is not a highlighter stain or anything like that, but all the other copies have the exact same blue spot in the same area. Now, because this is on a shadowless card, you can also find it on first edition cards as well, but the first edition copies are a lot harder to find than the shadowless. Comps have been a little up and down on this card lately. I'd say you'd be able to find one from anywhere between, say, like $45 to $65. Next up, we have the Wartortle Evo Box error. And how I talked about design errors before with the Diglett, this is also a design error. If we zoom into the Evo box there, we can see that it's actually another picture of Wartortle, when it should be a picture of Squirtle. There's a lot of these listed on eBay right now, but there's actually not a lot of sales data to go off of. I believe there was a few that sold in the last couple months, and they sold for around $150 each. So that's pretty pricey for an error like this. This has also been touted as a pretty rare repeated error, but I've seen so many copies, I don't believe that it's that rare. This one is known as the Dragonair Rainbow error. You may be confused on why it's called that. Well, if I zoom into the word number down here, it sort of looks like a rainbow kind of went right through the text. How exactly it looks like a rainbow, I am very confused. I'm not exactly sure how it looks like that, but all of the copies look pretty much like that. Sometimes they don't have as much rainbow-like color, but it's still referred to as a rainbow error. This is another error that happens on both shadowless and first edition copies. People have told me that the shadowless copies are more rare, but first edition copies sell for more, so I guess it's a double-edged sword there. Again, this is one I don't have much sales data for. I've seen a couple first edition copies sell for around $200 each. So I would say that the shadowless may be worth around $150 in decent shape. Next up, we have the No-holo Dark Dragonite. Now, I believe this card is very overhyped just because it's a Dragonite. I say that, and I am a very big Dragonite collector, so I guess that depends how you feel about it. But what this error actually is if you look at it, obviously it's a non-holo card, but if you look at the number down here at the bottom right corner, it says 5 out of 82. Well, that is actually the number of the holographic Dragonite. So how that happened, I believe it's just a design error. People like to say that they forgot to put the holo on it or things like that, but it's very obvious that this is a non-holo card. Holo cards, the whole sheet is printed with one layer of that holographic foil on the very bottom. So even if this was completely covered with white ink, you'd still be able to tell if it was a holographic card or not. This is actually one of the more expensive repeat errors. Again, it's very hard to find raw data. Everyone likes to grade this card before they sell it. I've seen a PSA 5 sell for like $300, and then I've seen some 8s and 9s sell for over $1,000. So this is actually a very pricey repeated error for a non-holographic repeat. Next up we have Black Dot Clefairy. Obviously the name comes from the large black dot you can see on the word now in the Sing description. The size of this dot actually varies though. You can find it bigger or smaller. The smaller version copies sell for a little less than the bigger ones. This has sold a few times recently. I've seen it range a bit, anywhere between like 50 and 100, 100 being more of the copies are selling around $100. Now this is a repeat that I'm a little concerned with, like people faking it out there. All the ones I've seen are all pretty similar. They all look like this big kind of like black smudge, but I feel like you could easily recreate that. So that's up to you if you ever want to go after one of these, but if you find it in your collection, I'm sure it is legit. This one is Hickey Neogenesis Kingdra, and this one is actually strange because there is multiple hickeys on the card. A hickey is just like an ink dot or splotch that shouldn't be in the location that it is. And we can see there's one right on his nose there. There's a hickey over here in the holographic. There's one on his stomach, and then I believe there's one sort of a little higher on the card. Yeah, up here by the fin, there's one up there. So this one actually has a lot of hickeys, and different copies of this card have different hickeys in kind of different areas, but most of them have that one on the nose there. This is another really hard one to gauge the price of, just because the sales data I wasn't really able to find any. So I would guess somewhere around like 35, 30, depending on the amount of hickeys. Like this one has quite a few hickeys, so maybe it's a little more, maybe the ones with less is worth a little less. It's hard to say. Here we have a line error Venonat. This one, the line is up in the top left corner, actually on the border of the card, which is quite strange to see. This error only happened on first edition copies of the Jungle Venonat, and back in the day, this used to be a really rare kind of error, and people were paying high prices for it. Nowadays, they're pretty common, and I've seen them sell recently for like around $20. Some in like super mint condition have sold a little higher, but pretty much around $20 now. Next up, we have a green dot Machamp, also known as blue dot Machamp for the people that are colorblind, but there is a dot right above the H in HP. Very similar to the dot that we see on Vulpix. It looks kind of like a highlighter splotch, but it is a repeated error that happens on multiple copies of this card. I'm a big collector of this card. I have a decent amount of copies, but it is very hard to find any recent sales data for this. I know I sold one of these in pretty rough shape recently for around $20, so I would say the nicer shape ones may be worth $40, $45, somewhere around there. Next up, we have the blue dot Poliwrath. This only happened on base set 2 copies of Poliwrath, and if we zoom in here on his swirl on his stomach there, we can see a little blue dot in the top right area. This is a pretty common misprint, so I would think it'd be pretty easy to find in your collection. If not, do a quick eBay search and I'm sure you'll be able to find one. I'd say they're worth around $20 with the recent sales data. Next up, we have Black Dot Charmander, D Dot Charmander, something like that. This one has a couple different names that people go by, but when we zoom in on Charmander's name there is a black dot right on the top of the D, and that is the misprint. These ones are pretty common, and again, they only go for around $10 for a decent shaped copy. Here we have a Hickey Exeggcute from Jungle set. Obviously, you can see the Hickey in the top area here. I call it the leaf hickey because I think it looks like a little leaf, and it's perfect for an Exeggcute card that it looks like a leaf. This is sort of a large-sized repeated hickey here, and the sales data on this card, again, is very tough to find. So I would give it an estimate around $35, $40, somewhere around there for these, and that might even be high. I'm not sure exactly how rare these are, but if you search eBay, you can find them pretty easily. Just can't find any sales, so maybe it doesn't appeal to all audiences like some of the other errors.
All right, that is all I've got for you guys today. I tried my best to pick out some cards that I felt like were pretty easily obtainable, and just ones that you might have a possibility to find in your collection and you actually never knew that you had. So thanks for stopping by. Tune in next time for some more Pokemon content.